This is the crown jewel, Mr. Good as Gold. This is Connor Hopkins.
I am Eric S. Knight.
And I'm a league champion.
And we are the chosen prodigal sons, and this is the Shotgun Wrestling Radio podcast.
What's up, everybody? It's Leon King here, of course, the baddest of the baddest, and you are now listening to Shotgun Wrestling Radio.
This is Gavin Parker, and you're listening to Shotgun Wrestling Radio.
This is the mechanic Big Beasley, and you are listening to Shotgun Wrestling Radio.
This is your deathmatch daddy Bo guy, and you're watching Shotgun Wrestling Radio.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Shotgun Wrestling Radio. I'm your host, Zach Takis, and we are continuing our road to the Hall of Fame weekend as we are now, still a little over a month away. By the time this week ends, we will officially be 1 month away from the Hall of Fame weekend in Waterloo, Iowa. And at this time, I'm very excited to welcome in my guest this time, Mr. Chad Olson, who does a lot with the museum as far as the planning goes and the organizing goes. And Chad, if I'm not mistaken, you, much like Joyce, our guest that we had last week, have also been to every single Hall of Fame that we've had.
Yep, that's correct, Zach. Thanks for having me. I've been to every induction, every Hall of Fame weekend since the inception, along with Joyce, Tim Dalton, and Steve Schmidt.
So how did you go to become involved with this weekend? What was your kind of first memories about hearing it way back when it was in Newton? Because for a lot of folks that don't know, it actually did start in Newton, where the museum was at, just right off Interstate 80. It was really not hard to miss, just because you saw that big sign there. I always loved driving by. You see that big sign there, and the building's still there. But yeah, what was your first introduction to this awesome weekend that we have?
Yeah, I was reading an issue of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, and it was talking about that they were going to have a Hall of Fame, honoring Lou Thez, and it was the first induction weekend was in conjunction with the Cauliflower Alley Club. So that was maybe, 2 months out before the event, and I talked to my good friend Tim Dalton, lives out in Buffalo, New York, and he's a big wrestling fan too, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll come out and we'll check this out." So we went to that very first one, and been coming back every year for 25 years.
Now, have you been a wrestling fan your entire life growing up?
Yeah, some of my earliest memories are hanging out with my great-grandfather and my grandfather on Sundays after church watching AWA All-Star Wrestling. So this would have been about 1983 or so. And it was on Sunday afternoons, and then it moved to Sunday nights. And a good friend of both of ours, Troy Peterson, his mom was the high school librarian at our school. So they had VCRs in the library. So she would record it because at least for me, not so much for Troy, but for me, it's hard for me to stay up 10:30 at night on a Sunday. But that was like about 84 when Rick Martel was champion and the Fabulous Ones were in there challenging the Road Warriors. So but the first thing I vividly remember is when Jerry Blackwell got turned on in the Battle Royal in June of 1984 by Brody and Abdullah. So that's what made me become a wrestling fan, and hasn't let up since.
Now, again, you've been to every single Hall of Fame, which now we're entering our 25th year. Did you ever think we would actually get to 25? I mean, it's pretty remarkable. Even since I was telling Joyce last week, I went to a couple of the ones in Newton, like a couple of the meet and greets. I remember going when Jesse the Body was there. I believe that was one of the early ones that was on. Because actually, so a fun story. My dad, growing up, he owned a construction business, did trim carpentry work, and I remember one time he's like, "Hey, I just got this call from this guy down in Newton to do some work on the wrestling museum down there." I was like, "Wrestling museum? Okay." And he was actually putting in the cabinets that were down in the basement for the library. It was his job to do the cabinets. So we went down there on a Saturday, and I spent basically all day in the museum that Saturday, kind of, I guess, as compensation for my dad putting the cabinets in, and for them down at the library and the museum, we were able to go to the induction later that year. And yeah, I remember meeting Jesse the Body and going to the induction. And I was also down there the year Bret Hart went, because anytime Bret Hart comes relatively close, that's one you don't want to miss.
Right. There's always been a lot of great people we've met, kind of once in a lifetime opportunities to meet folks like Jesse Ventura. He doesn't really get out much, so there's a lot of great memories from those early years in Newton. But I didn't I never thought about like early on, oh, we're going to get to 25. And I will say, after there was the flood in 2007 or 2008, that looked pretty grim times for the museum. And we rebounded and just had a great year ever
Do you
since.
have do you have any that so far, again, 25, so you're gonna have to trigger your memory here. Do you have any that
Yep.
have just really stood out to you as far as being just, wow, that one really like was the icing on the cake, was just ultra fun weekend? I know now you're probably more to the point where you're ready for the weekend to be done because you're involved in the planning process and getting everything set up, and now you're definitely well more involved than what you used to be. But when you could actually go back and attend it as a fan, was there
Mhm.
one that really stood out to you that was just like, damn, that was a lot of fun?
I mean, all of them have, different, memories associated with. I would say the year that Hart and Roddy Piper were there, that was pretty cool. Roddy Piper was always one of my favorites, and we met him in the elevator it was the Ramada then, now the Best Western Plus. So that was kind of exciting. Exciting for some other reasons too, when Bret Hart decided to make some comments, and Greg Oliver had written in a book for him. That was a unique situation. Um, the year JBL was there, we had moved down to a smaller banquet room, and I guess, that year there wasn't really high attendance, so that looked a little maybe like, oh, we're not going to get to 25. Go back to your first question. But in the years that I've become more involved in helping out Troy and the museum staff, I mean, it's an exhausting weekend, but it's still a lot of fun. So it's not like I'm like, man, I wish this was over, but I am I can relax a little bit on Sunday once we have everybody back to the airport and get the museum all put back in place. But it's still a lot of fun all weekend. You get to see folks you maybe only see once a year.
Yep.
And then, every year we bring in some new stars that I've never had the opportunity to meet, and that's just a lot of fun too.
Now, again, getting to the planning phase of things, again, I know we got some new members of the board. I know Conrad's been helping out you guys plan some of these things, and I'm sure he was a big part of getting, like Arn Anderson and Tony Schiavone in this year, which I'm super excited for that. I mean, not for Tony's one of those guys, and I know it's because he's with AEW now and his schedule's busy, but a chance to get Tony Schiavone to come here, I feel like he's probably the reason we had to move the ceremony to Friday night as opposed to Saturday, because they tape Collision on Saturday night. So I'm assuming that's part of the reason why. But even still, getting Tony to come to Waterloo, Iowa is a pretty damn big deal.
Yeah, we had actually been thinking about making that move for the last couple of years, and Wes Briscoe actually mentioned it to Troy and I a couple of years ago. It's like, maybe you should do it on Saturday night because we can get more wrestlers and even maybe more people into the show. Obviously Tony does have some commitments a lot of Saturday nights. So that worked out well, but him coming this year was actually not the rationale for the
Okay.
move. It was something we want to try. We'll see how it works if we get higher attendance at the show on Saturday night, and we're able to bring in a few extra guys for the show. Then we might keep it that way. But we're even 25 years in. We don't want to say, oh, we're doing it because we've always done it this way. We always want to make it new and exciting and try different things. Some things might stick, some things might go, well, that didn't work out so well, so we'll maybe put that in the we could have done it better pile.
Now, a student, again, you said you love it when it comes to that Sunday. Everybody's home, the museum's back together. You can finally put some rest. How soon after a year ends are you guys jumping right back in and planning the next year already?
About a week or two.
Oh,
We'll take a week or so off, but we also like to kind of reconvene and while it's still fresh in our minds and talk about what went well, what didn't go well, so we can kind of reassess things. So, and a lot of it too depends on the county fair schedule that Impact Pro Wrestling has at the same time, because a lot of times that Monday or Tuesday night we're running a show somewhere else. I think last year we were over in Johnson County. I think we had shows maybe Tuesday through Friday or Saturday night last year, the week after. So we give ourselves a little bit of breath, whether we're able to do it or if it's by necessity because we're running all those IPW county fair shows. But we like to get back on it right away and think about what we can do better and what we can do to improve the experience for the fans.
What kind of difference has it been for you guys to have, Conrad and his team on board? We know what kind of footprint Conrad has in with the professional wrestling community with his amazing podcast. Well, I'm a frequent listener to a majority of them, so to hear he have his involvement in it, and I think we can already see that with the wonderful induction videos they've put together for all of our inductees. I think has just been just a super great addition to this year's class because it really gives you that. It's again, they're like the WWE Hall of Fame induction videos, and only it's for the Trios Stats Hall of Fame. So what's it been like for you guys to work with Conrad and his team this year?
Yeah, I mean, if you hadn't mentioned it, that was the first thing I was going to say is those incredible videos that they put together, because they are amazing, and I think they just add a very professional touch to the presentation for the weekend. And he's been great to work with. Like you said, he helps us, as you might guess, help connect us with like a Tony Schiavone or an Arn Anderson, and just does a great job. And you can tell how much he enjoyed his first visit to the museum last year when he came in and was inducted and received the Soli Award.
Well, I know too, talking to one of my good friends too, Brian, he's a member of the Top Guys on ad free shows, and he said anytime Conrad's doing one of his Ask Conrad Anythings, yeah, Conrad always talks so glowingly about, the Hall of Fame and how much he's looking forward to getting there this year. And again, having somebody like that with his connections can only just benefit the museum moving forward. And let's kind of talk about some of the things that we're doing here this year. And one most intriguing matches that was announced, and again, we're moving to the show here on Saturday night this year. Again, the Impact Pro Wrestling show is Saturday night. The Hall of Fame induction ceremony is Friday night. So don't get those two wires crossed here, folks. One thing that I think is really cool, and I think has a lot of people talking, is I even heard Eric Bischoff bring this one up on his podcast.
Okay.
So it's Wes Briscoe with Jerry Briscoe in his corner versus Brock Anderson with Arn Anderson in his corner. I mean, you want to talk about two legendary wrestling families, man. It don't get much more legendary than that for a show here in Iowa.
I know. And I mean, I think it just speaks to the volume of the talent we can attract and the interest we can generate by having Briscoe versus Anderson, a second generation match like that. I don't know how much Jerry and Arn, I don't think their paths ever crossed too much unless it was early in Arn's career, but having Wes Briscoe and Brock Anderson in there, and actually I have our Facebook page right now with all the different matches, and that's the one I'm looking at, and I'm really excited for that match. And I'll be honest, I usually split the duties with Iron Mike Johnson, but sometimes I'm gonna say, and we're really good about sharing. I love Iron Mike, but I'm gonna say right now, Iron Mike, I think I got this one, buddy. We'll have to haggle for it later.
Yeah, no, it was just really cool to hear a guy like Eric Bischoff talk about that one on his podcast here last week. Because I know I've been posting them over on the Shotgun Wrestling Radio page on the Twitter page, and I think Jerry retweeted it. So I'm like, okay, that had to have been how Eric had seen it, which is kind of pretty cool. And yeah, again, there's just so much history and so much legacy there. And then of course we got the Luthez Battle Royal, which is one of my favorites of the event, just because of how much history is involved there. And another one I think that really kind of threw people for a loop, that they weren't expecting this, because it's not every day you see a guy like this wrestle. And we're talking about James Jeffries versus Rock Riddle. That's just interesting. When's the last time, to your knowledge, Chad, that Rock has stepped into the ring?
Well, I've seen him in battle royals out at the CAC a few times. So that's how the first time I actually saw him, when we went to the CAC back in 2014 or so. He won their big like Royal Rumble style event. And usually that match, their Royal Rumble, and I can't remember what they title it for copyright reasons. Usually had like 50 competitors. It was a huge match, and Rock won. But what really made me fall in love with Rock Riddle was the next year, it got down to the final three, and I think it was him, Sin Bodhi, and somebody else. And Rock got picked up and thrown over the top rope, and he took a flat back bump to the floor. And I mean, even at his age then, he was in his mid-60s. I'm like, oh my God, I think that guy got killed. So I mean, I went and talked to him after the event and everything, and became a big Rock Riddle fan. and he's a huge supporter of the weekends. I know he's been in the ring a few times since that 2015, 2016 time. I don't want to ask him because sometimes when you ask Rock Riddle a question, it turns into a long answer. So I just know he's ready to take on James Jeffries and try to grab that Impact Pro Wrestling title. And as always, I think James Jeffries will be up to the test. So I think this will be a pretty cool matchup.
Yeah, I had Rock on the show last year leading up to the Hall of Fame, and I think out of a couple questions of the questions I had prepared for him, I think I only got to 3 of them.
Yeah.
Just
I interviewed him for another podcast event a few weeks ago, and yeah, I probably got to 4, but I might have had a little more time blocked off than you, Zach, and he just goes to town, and he kind of interviews himself. I may have actually taken a nap during the podcast.
And believe us, folks, you will know Rock Riddle when you see him because he's always one of the best dressed guys throughout the whole weekend too. It doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
He will always be one of the best dressed. No offense to anybody else that goes to the weekend, but Rock is always looking his best, always looking like $1,000,000.
I've probably known about 10 years now. Between CAC and Hall of Fame, I've never not seen him in a suit and tie. Never.
That's incredible.
Yep.
Makes you wonder how many suit and ties that guy has.
Probably quite a few.
Oh man, but yeah, it's just gonna be a really incredible evening. I'm gonna run down some of the more guests that we have. We have Jerry Briscoe, obviously, Joe Malenko, Jim Miller, Wes Briscoe. We have Tony Schiavone, Arn Anderson. Of course, Dan Gable will be there at some point this weekend. Tito Santana, Arriba. That's one I'm looking forward to. I can't remember. I don't feel like Tito does a ton of conventions or whatever, so that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely not out in the Midwest. We saw him last month, excuse me, out down in St. Louis for our friend Herb Simmons event. Yep. And so I got to meet him for the first time, but I think normally he's more of stays out in the Northeast and does stuff. So I think it's a pretty rare appearance for him. So if you're ever interested in meeting Tito Santana, I'd definitely take advantage of that. In addition to all the other things we have going on, this is a pretty rare Midwest appearance for Tito, even though it's his second time within 2 months. I think other than that, he's not made the Midwest circuit too much.
For sure. And returning to the Hall of Fame weekend, Mark Henry, that'll be super exciting to get Mark again. And that's another thing when you see guys come back, it just really shows you how much they enjoy their time here, at the Waterloo Hall of Fame. I was actually listening to Al Getz' podcast, his latest one, the one that you were on, and you had brought up a really great point in it, or when you were talking about how intimate the weekend is, and it's like, you made a great point because it's Waterloo, Iowa. There's not many places to go. You're basically going from the hotel to the convention center to the museum because they're all within just a few blocks of each other, and that's pretty much where everyone is hanging out within that short little less than 3 mile radius.
Yeah, I mean, I know Troy said this on podcasts, and I've said it too. You can park your car in that ramp at the hotel, and you never have to move it.
Yep.
And that is the absolute truth. You can walk across the bridge downtown to a couple places to grab breakfast if you don't want the hotel breakfast. You can go over to Doughy Joey's, grab some food. They're always a great sponsor of ours. There's a few other bars a block away, or you can just sit in the hotel bar and hang out with all these legends of wrestling, and you can just be a fly on the wall to hear these amazing conversations and never have to leave. And, like I said on Al's podcast, it's not throwing shade at the CAC, but in Las Vegas, where the CAC is, there's a lot more things to do, right? So
just a little.
Yeah, just a few. I mean, I love Vegas. It's the happiest place on earth. But in Waterloo, Iowa, for that 3 days, if you're a wrestling fan, it's the happiest place on earth because you are so close. I mean, I know so many people who said, yeah, I'm not going to the bar because I'm in the hotel bar with Stan Hansen listening to him and JJ tell stories. I'm like, that's pretty good. That's not a bad entertainment option.
Well, let's face it, too. The bar is a lot more comfortable to sit in now than it was years ago. We've sat in some hot bars before. Honestly, you can say what you want about 2020 and COVID. It was probably a blessing in disguise because they were able to take that year to actually renovate the hotel and give us a much nicer hotel to come back to. Because, oh boy, did we have some hot nights in that bar.
I remember one year they had this giant. I mean, it looked like a washing machine, but it was a room air conditioner, and that thing did not work at all. I mean, they have definitely made lemonade out of lemons with that terrible place. But when you ask about memories, there's a lot of poor ones with the with some of the hotel facilities, but now it's a great place. And if you come, I think I would find it hard to believe that anybody would come to our event and not have a good time, just because you never know who's going to show up, you never know what's going to happen, and we always seem to put together a good time.
Well, like I even told Joyce, like you never know who you're gonna hop in the elevator with, or
Right.
whose room you're gonna have right next to you. There's been years where I've gone down the elevator and in walks Magnum T, or in comes Magnum TA right behind me,
Yeah.
and we can walk out of the elevator. Oh shit, there's Trish Stratus standing 15 feet away from me. Or, I mean, that's the beauty of it all. And yeah, everybody's just so. It's just such a, like you said, a relaxed weekend is really the best way to put it.
It is. I think people are accessible, people are friendly, and I think a lot of people who, like a Mark Henry or like the Steiners, when they get to meet Dan Gable, it's cool to see people that we are such fans of become fans and mark out for Dan Gable because they grew up watching him compete. Or, the Steiners wrestled against him when we coached at Iowa. And, the one year the Steiners were there, I remember Dan Gable saying, "Oh yeah, I remember we came over to Michigan and beat you guys," just, and somebody to see people talk like that to the Steiners. I mean, it's kind of funny,
And only
but
Dan Gable
it's
can do that.
true.
Only
Oh
Dan
yeah,
Gable can do that and get away with it.
exactly. Yeah. And I mean, it's pretty cool to see a guy like Scott Steiner get pretty emotional and choked up about being inducted into a Hall of Fame with Dan Gable's name on it. Um, one other thing with Mark Henry, I'm very proud to have a pretty cool picture of Mark Henry and my son Connor from the year. Mark Henry, my son Connor probably started coming when he was about 8, and he's been to a lot of the weekends with me. My twins, Catherine and Carter, have got to come, and they go to the show and stuff. And Catherine, it really enjoys meeting some of the female wrestlers like Trish Stratus and like Beth Phoenix, and they're always super nice to her and encouraging because she just started wrestling last year when girls wrestling became sanctioned in Iowa.
Very cool. Very cool. As we're continuing on to hear down the list of what's happening this weekend, I want a quick run through the award recipients and who's receiving what award on the ceremony coming up Friday night this year. Again, the award ceremony is Friday. Please don't get that mixed up. So, receiving the Gordon Soley Award is going to be the one and only Tony Schiavone. Going to be great to have Tony Schiavone here with us again. I believe probably his first time in Waterloo for this award too, so that's going to be extremely cool. And receiving the Frank Gotch Award is one of the enforcer himself, Mr. Arn Anderson. That's another one I'm super excited to me as well. Receiving the Vern Gagne Trainer Award, Dr. Tom Pritchard. That's another one, man. Let's talk about Tom Pritchard for a little bit. That's another one that's going to be a lot of fun here too. Brother of Bruce Pritchard. He's trained guys like Kurt Angle, The Rock. He has his own training school with Kane down in, I believe, Tennessee, I believe.
I think it's in Tennessee.
Yeah, so again, having a guy like Dr. Tom Pritchard, who I believe is part of the training seminar for trained wrestlers that's happening throughout the afternoon Saturday, that if you're a trained wrestler and you're interested in this training seminar, head over to Impact Pro Wrestling's Facebook page for more information on that and get to learn from the likes of Dr. Tom Pritchard.
Yeah, he'll be joining Les Thatcher, and maybe a couple others to do a training seminar. In between Les Thatcher and Tom Pritchard, I mean, good grief, you have probably, and no offense to either one of them, but you have over 100 years of pro wrestling experience and knowledge. And I just got to meet Dr. Tom for the first time down in St. Louis a couple weeks ago too, and he was very. It was funny because he's so boisterous and loud on TV. When he was part of the Heavenly Bodies, and he was a very quiet, of course, Jerry Briscoe was doing a lot of the talking too, but it was just fun to kind of hang out and visit with them, and again, be just kind of a fly on the wall to that conversation. But we're really excited to have Dr. Tom in Waterloo.
Yeah, for sure. Again, Les Thatcher, you just mentioned, another guy who was here for the first time last year, making a return this year. He was a lot of fun to be around last year. I had the privilege of interviewing him on the show as well last year, and he's just a lot of fun. Really, really nice guy. I know Our old pal Roy Fox was super excited to see him come back, as Les was Roy's
Yeah.
trainer that we all
Yep.
remember lovingly from the True Life I Want to Be a Pro Wrestler show. So
Yep.
it was pretty cool to see that reunion kind of take place there as well. And continuing on down the list here, the Jack Briscoe Spotlight Award is Mr. Tony Gurria. Tony's been here
Mhm.
several times, so again, another returning
Yeah.
guest that we have here for the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, we're excited to honor Tony with that award. And, that's one that's selected by Jerry Briscoe, named after his brother Jack, former world heavyweight champion. And Jerry did want to recognize Tony for all of his contributions to the wrestling business, 5-time WWF Tag Team Champion. He worked behind the scenes for many, many years in the WWF. And I don't think there could be a more fitting recipient of that award this year.
Cannot agree with you more there. And one more award that we got here, of course, is the Jim Melby Award winner, and that is Mr. Al Getz. Al is a big writer of territory wrestling, which, if you're kind of like me, you didn't grow up in the territories or get to experience that time, but love reading about it, Al is really the perfect person to have for this. And he's written tons of books. I mean, you want to talk about a guy who just loves territory wrestling. I don't think there's anybody better to go with than it comes to Al and what he's done over there. He does a monthly podcast where they just go over different territory things. And I listened to it again here today, and just really great. I'm actually having Al on the show here next week. So for those of you interested, we're continuing our Road to Hall of Fame weekend here next week. So Al's going to be our guest next week. So
yeah, he's fantastic. I mean, I've said this before, but I think his research and the development of his spot ratings,
Yep.
I mean, that's like state-of-the-art research. Because you think about it, wrestling is it's a sport that doesn't have a thorough history, because people always kind of looked at it with a side eye. So he takes the time to go back and go through newspaper clippings and go to different geographical spots and actually go to those libraries, try to track down and piece together part of the history of professional wrestling. And then based on that and where wrestlers were on the card, that determines kind of the level of push they're receiving. And I just think it's incredible. I'm a huge fan of his, and we're really excited to honor him with the Melby Award, because I think his contributions to history are only going to continue to grow and grow, and he's doing amazing stuff right now.
Yeah, I know the Melby Award got introduced here several years ago. It's been a really nice, award to get in there, because you get several different writers who have written some of our favorite books based on history, and that's just been another great addition here over the last several years. So let's go over some more of the matchups that we have for the wrestling show on Saturday night. Impact Pro Wrestling, man, they were busy this week on the social media front. That's for dang sure certain. We got Jeremy Wyatt versus Ethan Everhart. I had a couple people text me out of the blue when this one got announced, saying that has match of the night potential right there, as hard as both of these gentlemen hit each other.
I am so excited about this match. When Troy Peterson and I were talking about the show and who we wanted to book, I'm a big fan of Jeremy White. I've been a fan of his for, about 15 years now. And when we got him booked for the show, and we're trying to figure out who we could have him face off. And I think Troy might have mentioned it first, but if not, then I'm going to say that we co-thought of having Ethan against Jeremy Wyatt, and we're both really excited about that match. That'll be a fun match to make sure I'm out behind the curtain and peeking out so I can see everything that goes on. I think it's gonna be fantastic. I mean, Jeremy Wyatt is such a veteran and has an incredible arsenal and great wrestling style. And Ethan, I think, has just developed so much over the past 2 years and has just become an incredible wrestler and is making his mark, all over the country.
Yeah, that he really has. And again, anytime you have Jeremy Wyatt in any kind of match, really, it's you're in for a treat here. And another guy who I feel like has been at every Hall of Fame show since I started going in. I started going yearly back in 2012, and I feel like this guy's been on every single show. We're talking about Matty Starr versus a newcomer to the Iowa wrestling scene, at least, Mr. Rice Maddox, who is the son of WWE referee Jason Ayers. And this one's going to be interesting, because I know Rice doesn't have a ton of experience right now. So to kind of get out here in front of the Hall of Fame crowd, that's already going to be intimidating enough. But then you have a guy like Matty Starr, who you can call one of the best in the Midwest. That's a tall task for this kid to make his debut match here in Iowa.
Yeah, I mean, you could also call Matty Starr, a snake. a conniver. I mean, yeah, I hope, and I think his name is maybe pronounced Reese. I'm not
Reese?
100%
Okay.
of that. I think it's Reese Maddox, but yeah, young Maddox, I mean, he's going to have his hands full. Like you said, it's going to be a huge crowd. That'll be intimidating for him. And then he's wrestling, Maddie Starr. And that's going to be tough, but we'll see if Maddie Starr can, use that bag of tricks he's gained over his. I mean, man, he's been wrestling quite a while. I mean, I don't want to, give away Maddie's age, but he's a very experienced veteran for someone so young. So hopefully, Mr. Maddox has been trained well and will be up for that task.
Yeah, well, I started following Iowa independent wrestling and independent wrestling in 2005, and I think Maddie's been here every step of the way. So that shows how long and how much experience Mr. Maddie Starr has, and how, in my opinion, he's getting better with age as it comes, which is kind of scary thought. So another match we have announced, I think this is going to leave people talking too. I've seen both of these teams work together before on different shows, and they both have great matchups together. We got the IPW tag team titles and the Madhouse Wrestling tag team titles. The team of Chillalale versus the Hale Twins. So yeah, this one right here, man, I think this is going to leave some people talking.
I do too. I haven't seen this match in person, but I know from two folks with that I trust their opinion, Mr. T.S. Aggressor and Mr. James Jeffries, that they have, and they said it's outstanding. I know Troy had to do a lot of negotiating with Malice and the Madhouse upper management to make this come together, but I'm excited for it. And I personally, as a ring announcer, I'm supposed to be unbiased. I hope the Hale Twins kick the crap out of Chillalale because those guys are just annoying.
Another one that I was excited to see announced too. We haven't seen this gal in an Iowa ring for quite some time, to my knowledge. We're talking about Lainey Luck going up against Miss Frankie J for the IPW Women's title. Again, Lainey Luck is pretty well known amongst the Midwest scene. I don't remember when the last time she's been in Iowa though. So to get her back here in Iowa is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited about this one too because I feel like I'm embarrassing myself. I feel like I've seen her wrestle in person before, but I'm not 100%. I think she's wrestled for us maybe in the past. But it's been a while, so I'm excited to see that match because you're gonna have two of the best women's wrestlers, in our area going at it.
Yeah, when that one got announced, my brother-in-law actually sent me a message that he had seen Lainey recently at, I think it was Dreamwave in Chicago. He said Lainey was really, really good. I'm like, okay, because I'm like you, I haven't seen Lainey wrestle for quite some time. Obviously, we know what Miss Frankie J is capable of. We've seen her do some pretty incredible things, so that match should be a lot of fun. But again, that's gonna run down the dates real quick because we're just about out of time here. July 18th through July 20th. It all kicks off Thursday night with a 5 p.m. kickoff party and pizza party at the museum. I know there's still time to get your all access passes. What are the all access passes price up to right now?
They are, oh boy, Zach, you have to ask me that. They are right around, I think, $125 right now.
Okay.
I think they're that until the end of June, but I'm going to try to get you a definitive answer here in our remaining time.
And that'll get you into everything for the weekend.
Everything.
So if you're thinking about doing the all access pass, that gets you into everything.
Correct. Yeah, it gets you into the Thursday night start with the social. It gets you into the trivia contest, which is at the bar on Thursday night. That's become a pretty popular event. All the stuff on Friday will include the autograph session. We're kind of flipping everything, the schedule on Friday and Saturday. So the autograph session will be on Friday in the afternoon. Get you into the banquet on Friday night, which is always a great honor. And we're actually bumping the start time of that back a little bit to allow folks to get in on a Friday night. And then it'll get you into the stuff at the museum on Saturday, get you a ticket for the Impact Pro Wrestling show, and just get you a ticket to a whole lot of fun and great experiences as well.
That it absolutely will. And if you guys want more information on this amazing weekend, go over to the Facebook pages for either Impact Pro Wrestling or the George Trejos Luthez Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. If you search Facebook for either one of those, both of those pages will come up. And if you guys want the all access passes, tickets to the Saturday wrestling show, it's all available right there. So it's going to be very exciting. Chad, it's hard to believe we're almost a month away, my friend.
I know. I mean, this is when it gets into kind of sprint time. And actually the all access passes right now are up to $150.
Okay.
If you are a lifetime member, you can get it at a discount. And I do want to pitch that, our lifetime membership for this year, for the 25th year, we're doing a t-shirt. It's got all the lifetime members' names on the back. And if you order that before the end of the month, you can get your name on there. I think it's maybe order deadline is July 3rd. So you can become a lifetime member. You can buy one of the t-shirts. Even if you're not a lifetime member, you want a really cool t-shirt, buy that. It'll be a lot of fun. And we have a silent auction again this year. Trying to think of things I didn't mention. That's always a good time. Get that shirt. Zach, I think we've covered it all.
I believe we have. The only thing that I wish I had more time for was to ask you about all the baseball bats that are hanging behind you there. I might have to ask you about that at Hall of Fame weekend, though.
There you go. I collect mini bats when I go to a new stadium. And then
cool.
I've gone to the College World Series for almost 20 years, so I have one from every College World Series. So that's kind of what those are. And I like minor league baseball better than major league. So I have a lot of cool minor league teams from around here in the Midwest.
Cool.
But yeah, we can talk about that more off air.
So, all right, sounds good, man. Again, Chad, thank you for joining me, guys. That's gonna do it for us here on this week's edition of Shotgun Wrestling Radio. Thank you for your continued support, and until next time, we'll see you right here on the World Wide Web.